Welcome boys and girls, Christine here with a discussion about the most dangerous AI factions in Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. Some of these factions are very scary to deal with in general, others are very strong early on, but not necessarily later on. And then some are just ridiculous if they end up building up that strength. Though of course you have to take into consideration faction potential, because that dictates how powerful a faction is going to be compared to other AI factions, and whether or not they will manage to build a massive empire. But some, even if they are on the lower end of faction potential in that specific campaign, are still a gigantic threat to deal with. So at number 5, we have Thorek Ironbrow, the boomer dwarf, and he has a lot of grudges to settle. What makes Thorek so very dangerous? Well, let's consider his starting position. He starts with gold, so that means he's going to have a stronger economy from the beginning. He has a runesmith. He's also going to get a feign pretty quickly, and he's going to get a bunch of longbeards and quarrelers. That alone is very dangerous. And then once he starts pumping out iron drakes and other things in his campaign, even more so. On top of that, when we consider his starting position, he doesn't really have many natural threats. I mean, you could think of Wurzag, but Wurzag is kind of a coin flip. He can be ridiculously strong and dominate this entire sector of the map, though he does have some issues with Kairos, or significant issues with Kairos. But other times he just struggles a bit. Whereas Thorek, he is very resilient as a faction. He doesn't necessarily expand the most compared to some other factions, but he is difficult to deal with. The reason he's so difficult to contend with is, if you look at his faction effects, you don't think it's a big deal, right? But then you look at his lord effects, and that is a very different affair. He gets armor for his entire army, armor-piercing weapon damage, and reload time reduction for a lot of the traditional units he's going to use, naturally. And then he has a bunch of benefits with regards to runes, and with regards to construction cost and time in his province. He also gets a Master Rune of Spite, which makes him fairly damn deadly in a campaign situation. And then he gets armor-piercing missile damage plus 50% for quarrelers, Rune of Burning for bolt throwers, for instance, if he actually does recruit them. And then he does get anti-large benefit for grudge throwers. And then on top of that, charge, bonus, and frenzy for his entire army. His faction may not necessarily build the best and strongest armies of every dwarf faction, but dealing with Thorek's own army is very dangerous. And then you on top of that add all the inherent benefits that dwarves have in their campaign, combined with his relatively safe starting position, where a lot of the dwarf campaigns, or every single one of them actually, except Thorek, they do have natural enemies and powerful ones. Now, if you're playing dwarves, that's not really an issue, but when you're not playing dwarves, that's where they can struggle. I mean, sure, Thorgrun can end up owning half the map if you let him, but he can also be wiped out in like turn 7 by Skarsnik, of all people. So that is the kind of mix and match you have, whereas Thorek is always going to be a persistent presence in the campaign area. The good side of things is that, with exception of Manfred, and who cares about Manfred, and Wurzag to an extent, if you're playing a campaign in this area, you don't really have to tackle him directly. And Khalida will slow him down to a certain extent, and I emphasize to an extent. But if you end up fighting a battle against Thorek, it is a genuine nightmare. Like, just a baseline army of dwarves under him is ridiculously strong, and that does make him a problem to tackle. At number 4, we have Zhao Ming, the Iron Dragon of Grand Cathay. Like with Thorek, he doesn't really have any natural rivals. In fact, he's in a much better position than Thorek in that respect. To the west, he has Greasus, and Greasus and him will have pretty good relationships from the beginning of the campaign. And then when you consider the fact that Zhao Ming has a special skill line that further improves diplomatic relations with ogres, then these two are pretty close together. And Greasus, yes, Grimgor can come down from the north and wipe him out and be a problem. But that usually takes time for it to happen. Like, I've seen Grimgor do a lot of things in a campaign and become a biblical threat holding the Mountains of Morn. But I've rarely ever seen Grimgor invade Cathay, AI Grimgor. Gorst, well, he, Kugath, and Greasus do tend to end up in a war with each other. Then he has Gelt to the east of him, so Gelt is containing the Kala. You might think the Kala could be a problem for Zhao Ming's AI, but between Akai and Gelt, she's going to be slowed down sufficiently. And this is the key aspect with Zhao Ming. It's not just the fact that he has a safe starting position, it's that he builds up and becomes a genuine threat in a campaign for everyone. Like, this guy, I'm pretty sure he can recruit, when under AI control, he can recruit Jade Warriors at close to 0% upkeep. At least for one army, if not multiple armies. And then you add in Gate Guard and a couple of other things, then yeah, it becomes pretty ridiculous. Faction effect-wise, he gets 15 armor for melee units, which means he has a significant auto-resolve benefit. Cathayan units already have a pretty powerful auto-resolve benefit because of that level of armor. Add 15 on top of that, they become ridiculous, and then melee attack and melee defense for Ogre Mercenaries if he gets them. In fact, he actually starts with the mercenary faction close to him, though unfortunately he actually wipes out because he would be even more powerful with, Mornfang cavalry and man-eaters and all that. But he can eventually get stuff from Greasus if he's still around. But on top of that, he gets extra caravan, so extra cash, items, and that magic item drop chance plus 100%, and minus 25% upkeep for melee units for his army. Furthermore, as I stated, he does get diplomatic relations benefit with Ogre Kingdoms, plus 40. That is a pretty substantial benefit in his campaign. Extra alchemist, construction costs for buildings in a local province, regeneration, and very importantly, desert armor, plus 10 armor for melee units in his own army, plus 15 weapon strength for melee units, and 10% melee attack for melee units. That is a ridiculous amount of melee benefit, so yes, Zhao Ming is quite crazy when it comes to making a melee army. Let me just put it like this. If this guy actually gets Ogre Mercenaries consistently in his campaign, he becomes an enormous threat to contend with. And because of his starting position, he is difficult for anyone to really deal with. Even if you start in Cathay like Snitch, Dekala, Lokir, all that, it is a genuine issue. Like, Zhao Ming is the biggest issue, or rather the only issue you're going to encounter in this entire campaign. Everyone else is kind of easy to deal with, including Miao Ying. But where Zhao Ming becomes annoying as hell is when he has time to build up. And unless you're starting a campaign in Cathay, you're going to have trouble preventing that from happening. Even as someone like Kugath or Gorst, because you have the other to deal with, right? So that is in itself a problem. And when he builds up, you defeat an army of his, and then he throws 3 more at you. Like, I invaded Cathay with endgame changeling armies in one campaign, and let me say this much. I steamrolled over virtually everyone else in that entire campaign, because changeling, of course. But Zhao Ming was a hell of a fight. Like, he would just throw army after army after army, and not just Jade Warriors and Jade Warrior Crossbowmen, which he can recruit very quickly in a campaign. He starts with tier 1 barracks, he gets to tier 2, gets Crossbowmen. But when we're thinking about the entire arsenal of Cathay, pretty much, or vast majority of the arsenal of Cathay, so you're thinking artillery units, Jade Lions, Jet Lions, Celestial Lions, Grey Moonbirds, all that kind of stuff. It was something of a campaign. And it took quite a while to stop him, really. Literally, I had to throw the Black Pyramid and a gash there to, really hurt him in a way, or else just find endless hordes of Cathay over and over again. And you would recruit very quickly, because Cafe has a couple of problems, right? When you're playing them as a race, casualty replenishment, limited recruitment slots, tiers. But AI doesn't care about that. And when you add in Cafe's inherent benefits in campaign movement range and upkeep, ends up being pretty ridiculous. Do not underestimate the Iron Dragon. He might be a mutant, but he's really powerful. And number 3, we have Queek Headtaker of the Skaven. The Skaven in general are one of those really frustrating races to deal with in a campaign. But the upside of dealing with pretty much all of them is that they kind of start in vulnerable positions in the campaign, and thus you can contend with them rather quickly. Not easily, certainly not easily, when they throw free armies of clan rats and Skaven slaves at you very early on in the campaign, but at least early enough. The problem is, unless you're literally playing Scarbrand or Khalida, and Khalida's kind of question mark because, you know, Thorek, Kronkar, and all that, but unless you're playing Scarbrand, you're going to have a difficult time actually dealing with Queek early on before he becomes an insane apex predator threat in your campaign. Like, to give you an idea of how crazy this guy is, I've seen this guy fight a dozen factions to a standstill, AI factions. He wasn't strictly winning, but he wasn't losing either, and I had to intervene myself in one campaign, etc. I had a lot of vassals, they were throwing everything they had against them, and he was beating the crap out of them. He wasn't able to advance against them, but he was winning. Like, the thing about Queek is he has a tendency of taking Carragate Peaks pretty quickly. Like, you see these provinces over here, so you got Blightwater, you have Eastern Badlands, you have 8 Peaks, you have the Southern World's Edge Mountains. Unless Emmerich shows up and takes this territory, and Emmerich does have his own issues, Queek will generally take all of this territory, and that it was very dangerous because he can navigate it pretty quickly. So unless you have underway, you're going to have problems with that. And the distance is such that he can very quickly move one force from one end to another. That's pretty damn dangerous. But then there's more. He gets +2 hero capacity for chieftains, so he literally will be able to get 5 heroes very quickly in a campaign. So the 3 chieftains, and then he can also get assassins very quickly, so that's 2 more. That's 5 heroes. That is an incredible level of strength for any faction to have 5 heroes so quickly in a campaign. Most factions don't. In fact, I think he's one of the very few cases where he does. And then, of course, you know, Skaven get more heroes as they progress through the campaign. But this gets worse, because he reduces the leadership for enemy lords and heroes in a local region. He gets a melee attack benefit against dwarves and greenskins, weapon strength, and ability number uses for menace below. On top of that, he also improves the leadership of his army and gets frenzy and loyalty for warlord recruits. But most importantly, he obviously gets life is very cheap, pretty useful, but crucially, he gets Crimson Guard. And Crimson Guard is really the winner, because while Storm Vermin for every other Skaven faction are generally not worth recruiting, he can recruit Storm Vermin faction-wide, as long as he's obviously alive. He can recruit them in 1 turn. And here's the thing about Skaven. They can recruit a lot of units very quickly in a campaign. So you defeat an army of Queek, congrats, he's just going to recruit 3 more. No problem whatsoever. He has a control benefit, an ambush benefit. And he is an absolute freaking monster in battle. Like, Queek is not the best duelist in the game, but he's certainly damn terrifying to actually deal with. So when you add all of that together in his campaign, you end up with a nightmarish threat. Like, he really is the Vermintide all on his own. Most Skaven factions tend to do squat when they're under the control of the AI. Queek is holding up the entire Skaven race on his bloody shoulders, and I'm not joking. He is consistently the one Skaven faction that survives for a very, very freaking long time. And number 2, we have the one, the only Grimgor Ironhide. Grimgor is one of those legendary factions in the game. Like, I've seen this guy take the entirety of the Mountains of Morn by like turn 40. That was before Fronzike Tamarkan poses a challenge for him at the moment. He can actually lose to Tamarkan, but if he fights him to a standstill, he's a problem. If he conquers the Mountains of Morn, he's a biblical threat. And God forbid he actually takes Arnagrund, which he can, I would add, and has. In many campaigns I've played, I've absolutely seen Grimgor take the entirety of Mountains of Morn plus Arnagrund. Enjoy dealing with that particular nightmare. He gets post-battle loot, so when he fights factions and defeats them, keeping in mind the significant level of upkeep benefits greenskins do have, or AI factions have, plus 30% post-battle loot, this guy's gotta be swimming in cash. I've seen Grimgor by turn 40 have like 50k, 60k, 80k, 100k gold. This is a guy that's swimming in money. He's literally built a swimming pool of actual cash floating around. He's filled it with cash and he does not give a damn. But there's more, because Grimgor would not be satisfied with just simple stuff. Now, he can, because of the greenskin changes, he can obviously recruit Black Orc big bosses and big guns at tier 2. He gets Black Orcs at tier 3. He gets a bunch of heroes. And when I say a bunch of heroes, he gets free heroes, Black Orcs. It's a shame the AI doesn't really use heroes that effectively. That would actually make Queek more dangerous. To be fair, the AI does use some of its heroes, but not all of them in battle. It's a bit of a weird decision by the AI. It would actually make the AI more challenging if they did. But all those heroes, plus Grimgor's benefits, make him ridiculously hard to deal with. And then he replenishes campaign movement range after winning a battle. He has the Your Next ability, which is a major debuff. You do not defeat Grimgor in battle. Like, I'm serious. You can have endgame armies throwing against Grimgor, and your best bet in that battle is don't try and duel him. He'll most likely win that duel if he's leveled up himself. Like, this guy is just ridiculous crazy. Like, I had endgame cast dwarf armies with mods that gave them nukes, and he still put up a real fucking fight against me. But that's not all. He gets further hero capacity for Black Orc big bosses, armor piercing, charge bonus, leadership, yeah, all kinds of things, frenzy for himself, and extra campaign movement range replenishment after winning a battle. Losing against Grimgor is highly not recommended, because you will have a few fucking problems. He's also literally unbreakable if he gets that skill over there. Thankfully, the AI does tend to build things badly. I mean, literally, you do not survive, you do not defeat Grimgor, you outlast Grimgor, defeat his army, and then you pray you can kill him after you've killed everything else, if he is unbreakable. That is the nightmare that Grimgor poses in a campaign. I'm not joking. You can kill his entire army, but if you're not strong enough, and you have to be pretty damn strong, he might literally win the battle on his own. I've seen that happen. It is genuinely terrifying. So why is he not number one? Because the faction that's number one is CA just being ridiculous in terms of the things it did. And finally, at number one, it is Throgg, the Troll King, who is a pretty substantial threat to deal with. Northguy in general is one of those races where either you deal with them very quickly, or someone deals with them very quickly, or they become a genuine, persistent nightmare to tackle. The only legendary lord in the game who has an easy time dealing with Norska is Malachi, and that's just because he's Malachi. But even Malachi has to jump around dealing with various things like Azazel, Throgg, Arbol, and Archeon. Now, here's the thing. Archeon, Demon Prince, Arbol, they all are dangerous things. Yes, even the Demon Prince. Specifically because of all the regiments renowned that Archeon and the Demon Prince both get. Same with Be'lakor. Arbol is dangerous because Khorne is dangerous. But the AI for those races and factions doesn't really take advantage of all the benefits they have. At least when we're talking about Archeon and Arbol. Forget Daniel. Whereas AI Norska definitely will. There are many campaigns I've played where either Wulfric or Throgg takes control of Norsca. The only coin flip really with this faction is who's gonna gain control of Norsca. It's not if either of them is gonna get control of Norsca, it's who is going to do so. Like basically who's going to defeat the other militarily and then just dominate all of Norsca, recruiting vast and powerful armies. Wulfric can be a problem, but if Throgg confederates Wulfric, that is a whole different situation to deal with. So, a couple of benefits for Throgg. He's decent enough in combat, he has a casualty replenishment hero, but crucially he has quite a few benefits for Norscan Ice Trolls. And the danger zone with Norscan Ice Trolls is that they have pretty decent level of armor, pretty solid leadership for trolls, and a whole bunch of other benefits. And also, rarely enough, these kind of monstrous infantry units, when you recruit a couple of them, it doesn't necessarily matter that much in our result, but when you recruit a whole bunch of them, it absolutely does. So a whole bunch of Norscan Ice Trolls, or Norscan Trolls in general, can be a big issue. And God help you if Throgg manages to get any of the special troll recruitment structures, because then it becomes an even bigger problem for you to deal with. Post-battle loot, upkeep, physical resistance, all these kind of things. Very powerful benefits. The Troll King benefit from his Lord effects, regeneration, leadership for troll units, pretty good stuff all around. And then you consider extra leadership, upkeep benefits, all kinds of different things. Regeneration, horrible regeneration, missile resistance for trolls and skin wolves for his army. That is a pretty big threat. One major issue is with regards to global recruitment. Because you see, the AI in itself already has a bunch of global recruitment slots and global recruitment time benefits. But when you add this on top of that, and you also give weapon strength to all monster units faction-wide, then that becomes a real damn problem to actually tackle. Like, seriously, it's not even funny when you think about, like, the shit he gets through his special skill lines, like Battle Healing Cap, all armies faction-wide, pretty important for trolls, recruit rank, experience for his army, Call of Nostrous Horde, all armies faction-wide get physical 10% extra physical resistance for trolls, river trolls, etc. Right? Well, the special kind of trolls, which the AI may not unlock. And then you also gotta consider the Troll Empire. While the AI is pretty bad at managing all of it, it certainly will get some of these benefits. And that's pretty damn ridiculous. And of course, on top of that, Throgg also gets trolls easier to recruit in quite a few ways, you know, because you got Troll Lair, Tier 1, lots of benefits from that perspective. Though, he should probably start with that structure, just saying, would make sense for him. But anyway, a final thing to mention for Throgg is something that's completely broken about Norsca at the moment. That CA does not... That CA broke actually with some of the latest versions. I believe it was a beta, then they moved live. Someone mentioned that it's still an issue. And what is that specific issue you're talking about? Well, if you build an altar of the eagle, which, yeah, question mark whether or not the AI will do so. Typically they will get these altars, even if it takes them a while. But here's the crazy thing about the altar of the eagle. And this is also something tying to Throgg's own personal benefits. See, Throgg gets an extra structure, gives growth. Growth structures plus AI growth, pretty powerful, right? But altars of Tzeentch give 25 research rate points after winning a battle. This is ridiculously strong. Again, you can't rely on the AI getting it, but if it does, and it starts unlocking technologies very quickly, then, well, let me just say it. Ways of Monstrous Horde is very freaking dangerous to deal with. Like construction time for troll buildings, construction time for provincial capitals, all kinds of things. So, the AI being able to benefit from faster research is one of those nightmare scenarios. Again, it may not happen. But even without those kind of things, Throgg just gets shit done. So you're either playing Malachi or Kislev, really, to deal with him quickly enough, and even then, can be a bit sketchy, especially as Kislev, given everything else you gotta deal with. Or you get to deal with the Troll Emperor. And if he defeats Wulfric, and he can, and he does a lot of times, then enjoy dealing with all of Norsca and the infinite number of troops that they have. Seriously, Norsca just recruits so many units. And God forbid if he actually reaches Empire of Trolls, because then it becomes ridiculous. Like, seriously, this is broken completely. And when I say it's broken, I mean in the sense that when you're looking at a WoW army, it depends on the army sizes you already have, right? Here, it's just a faction effect. So you can literally have armies, and the AI does love to recruit a bunch of lords with very few units in them. We certainly see that coming. If he actually gets this and uses it, then it's GG well played, because you're dealing with WoW armies that last a very freaking long time, and it doesn't matter what the initial size of an army was, it's going to be a full stack at the very least. That is a nightmare scenario. On top of all of the upkeep, recruitment rank, leadership, and perfect vigor benefits that he also gets on top of that. Like, this is the thing about Throgg. Inherently, Norsca is a race that can produce a lot of units and have a lot of power. And that's the problem you're dealing with Throgg. But if things go his way, and let's say you're starting distantly and he manages to get a lot of power, then this becomes a fucking nightmare. And that is not a joke. Like, endgame Throgg, again, it's a lot of stars aligning. But even early game, mid game Throgg is nothing to joke about. So that's all I had to say. Questine signing out, and I'll see you next time.